It's great to have back on the program today Michael Cohen, former personal attorney to Donald Trump, also host of the Mea Culpa podcast and author of the forthcoming book, Revenge: How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics. It's out on October 11th, and you can pre order it already on Amazon. Michael, great having you on. I appreciate it.
Good to see you, David.
So, I mean, I
By
don't
the way,
really.
just to let you know, you can actually pre-order a signed copy, a limited edition signed copy, if you go to revenge-thebook.com.
Revenge-thebook.com for signed copies. Beautiful. There are at least 4 investigations right now into the former president. You've got the New York finance investigation, the Mar-a-Lago document scandal. You've got January 6th, and then you have the Georgia election results. Given your knowledge of Donald Trump, is he genuinely rattled by this stuff, or does he think he's just sort of, invulnerable?
Well, there's unfortunately, I can't give you the answer to that one because Donald is a narcissistic sociopath. So how he expresses himself as it relates to any one specific issue, it's very hard to get into his head. From his body language, I can tell you that this Mar-a-Lago raid really got to him. But so did the Tish James lawsuit that is now confronting him, because that attacks his ego. It attacks what basically he's lived for his whole life, which is to be able to impress upon others how rich he is. And this 220-page indictment, it negates all of that by simply showing that he's really nothing more than just a petty con man.
You explained during your testimony under oath years ago, I don't even remember now exactly when it was, it's all kind of been a blur, but you explained this strategy of claiming that an asset is worth more if you want to use it as collateral for a loan, but claiming that the very same asset is worth less if you're trying to reduce your property taxes that you owe. How explicit was that strategy when you were Trump's personal attorney? Was it openly discussed?
So, as I explained, and I think you're referring to the 2018 testimony before the House Oversight Committee with the
Yes.
late, great Elijah Cummings, God rest his soul. Every year, Alan Weisselberg and I would be called into Donald's office, at which point in time Donald would say, after looking through the personal financial statement of the year before, how much more money he believes that he is worth and how he wants the personal financial statement to reflect that. Now, one of the things was the reason why he was doing it. And the initial reason was for Forbes magazine. He is obsessed with being on that Forbes 400 list. But he didn't want to just be on the list. He, of course, wanted to be as high on the list as he possibly could. And so, for example, in 2012, like he would say, I'm not worth, as in 2011, $4 billion. I'm actually worth 6.5. And then the year after, he would say, I'm worth 8. No, in fact, I'm worth 9. And then it would go on and on like this. And these are random numbers that Donald would just create in his head simply because he would say the real estate market is good this year, meaning that my assets are worth more. Well, again, one of the things that he testified to in the Tim O'Brien case was that appraisals to him don't really mean anything. It's all what he believes the value of the price to be. It's selective pricing, so to speak.
And so what's interesting about that is if he is just sort of deluded about what these properties are worth, it's less overtly criminal in a sense, right? Because he's not saying, I don't believe that this is the value. He's deluded into thinking that it is.
I don't think so. What happens is he may be deluded into the total net worth, but as we would sit there, for example, the famous case of his triplex apartment, I don't care how deluded you are in your mind. You know that your house, in this case, the triplex apartment, is not 33,000 square feet. How do you know such a crazy thing? Because you live there. Not
Right.
only in his case does he live there, he actually built it. So imagine you're building a house in whatever city, state, that you live in. And somebody comes over and they say, "Oh, did you just build a house?" "Yeah, I just built it." And then you tell them it's 33,000 square feet when in fact it's 10,800 and change. Clearly, it's a lie. Then, on top of that, not only as the developer, not only as the owner, not only as the person whose name is on the building, you know that no property has ever traded, not just in that building, but anywhere in New York City for that price per square foot, coming up with what, a $370 million valuation on his apartment? That's not delusional, right? That's a liar.
That's fair. That's fair. One of
Well,
the
thank you for
things
saying that. Thank you for saying that, David.
One of the things that that Donald Trump mentioned after the pictures were released from the search warrant that was served at Mar-a-Lago was, the pictures make it look like my office is a mess, and my office is not really a mess. However, there are older pictures of Trump's office where there are, books and papers stacked all over the place, and it does sort of seem like a mess. Was it typical that the offices were a mess?
No. In fact, his office was extremely clean
Oh,
and organized. There were times that his desk would have papers cluttered on it, but remember something. I'm talking about Trump Tower on the 26th floor. What he would do is he would have stacks of magazines and papers in the front of the desk, whereby, of course, your chair, if you were in a meeting with him, would be there. And those magazines would have covers of him on it or articles of him. And if you were, let's say David Pakman comes into Donald Trump for whatever the reason might be, you could sometimes end up leaving with a little bag full of magazines and newspaper clippings and, a little piece of a silver or a gold Trump chocolate bar,
yeah.
things like that. I mean, you walk out there, you think that this was some sort of a carnival, that people are handing things, or a job fair. That's really what it would look like. But for the most part, his desk was rather organized. Now, when the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, what you're looking at is the office, which is above the catering hall. And all of these documents are on the floor. I believe that they were placed on the floor by the FBI
For the
so
picture.
that they could photograph it.
Yeah.
When the FBI raided my hotel room, it was funny. My wife had several $1,000s that she had collected for from the Real on items that she had sold, and she would do it so that she wouldn't have to tell me to buy it. And it was in the safe with her money, and in fact, on the envelope it said real money, so she would know what she was getting. They fanned it out. It was something like $6,000 or something like that. They fanned it out like they just raided and found Escobar's billions, and this is what they do. But I do have to say that when they came in, they were professional, they were respectful, they did not destroy the place. They did their job, and they did it the right way. And I suspect that they did the same thing at Mar-a-Lago. Now, why'd they lay it out on the floor again? Maybe it was just so that they could take the picture. But we have to thank them for taking those pictures. And the reason I say that is we see that there are dozens of top secret file folders. And now we know that many of those file folders were empty.
Right.
Now, rest assured, he wasn't taking those folders so that he could make menus out of them for Mar-a-Lago, for their lunches and dinners. There must have been documents in there. And we know some of those documents were really top secret, eyes only on the person who wrote it, nuclear secrets about whether it's our adversary and our ally. So we have to really thank them for doing their job professionally. I'm sure it wasn't easy to go in and raid the home of the former president of the United States, but they did what they needed to do.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Speaking of representation in that matter and the others, what do you make of the lawyers that show up on TV as Trump's lawyer, like Alina Habba and Christina Bobb, for example? This is a very different cadre of lawyers than the folks that were photographed showing up in court the other day. Is it just that Trump says, hey, I like the way that these women look, let's hire them and make them more like a PR type people that talk for me on TV, but they're not actually representing me before a court? Is it as simple as that?
Well, that's not true, by the way. So the answer is the visuals for him are extremely important. And he believes that it also gives him a sense of strength, masculinity. He's a very complex individual. Alina Habba does go to court.
Oh, she does?
In fact, she's representing Donald in a lawsuit that I currently have against the United States government, against the Department of Justice, Donald Trump, Bill Barr, for the unconstitutional remand of me back to Otisville because I refused to waive my First Amendment constitutional right.
So maybe what she meant, Michael, just to clarify, is she was not representing him in court in the particular matter she was being interviewed about. Maybe that's what she meant.
That's correct.
Okay.
She just makes her statements. I find her to be as unqualified in court as she is on television.
Oh.
And the same thing goes with Bob, who I think is somewhat brighter than Alina in the fact that she doesn't always open up her mouth and say what Donald wants her to say. That's a real problem. However, what Bob did is she signed a document that the government, of course, is in possession of, that claimed that Donald is not in possession and that she must have made some sort of a thorough check. But
Right.
Based upon the statements of her client, she signed an affidavit that no additional documents exist in the possession of Trump or at Mar-a-Lago. And that's clearly a lie. So is she in trouble for it? She certainly could be. I mean, it's a perjury charge. But look at what Donald does. It's who's going to be the next fool? Who's going to be the next Michael Cohen fool to fall on the sword for this orange-crusted Mandarin Mussolini who doesn't care about anyone? And so you begin to see these various lawyers, especially the competent ones, walk away. And they walk away for two reasons. Because Trump's strategy only benefits Trump, even if it hurts the lawyer. And worse than that, he doesn't tell them the truth. And let me make a third one. He also doesn't pay.
Yeah.
Other than this recent one, who took the money up front. And good for him.
Yeah. Save America PAC reportedly paid something like $3.8 million to a West Palm Beach firm in the last couple of months. So it seems like now lawyers are demanding money up front, which seems very, very smart. Michael, if you had to handicap all of the different investigations going on right now, which is the most likely to actually lead to charges?
Well, we already know that the Tish James case is the one that is the most active and the most upfront. Next up, this is like a ball game, right? Next up is the district attorney's case here in New York, whereby Alan Weisselberg has already pled guilty to various criminal charges, but they have intelligently held off on the sentencing of his case post his testimony against the Trump organization. Now, let me just reiterate for your listeners that the Tish James case is a civil case. This is the case that will ultimately wipe him out financially. And again, in the 220 plus page document, one of the things that Tish James puts in there is that her baseline number was 250 million. And I want to draw people's attention to the word baseline. That is not the cap, that is the baseline. Knowing the documents that they used and knowing the case as well as I do, I suspect the number will be closer to 750 million to $1 billion. That's what I think she will ultimately go after. Now, the district attorney, the case that was originally brought by Cyrus Vance Jr., now inherited by Alvin Bragg. That's a criminal matter. And that criminal matter is, as Weisselberg would like you to believe, is against the Trump Organization. How do you separate Donald Trump out from the Trump Organization, his eponymous company? You cannot. Let me just say one last thing. That Tish James has already referred certain parts of that 220-page document on tax evasion to the IRS and to the DOJ. So everything is beginning to come full circle. I mean, I know that we always say that the wheels of justice, unless you're Michael Cohen, that's a 48-hour ordeal.
Yeah, that was quick.
Turns slowly, but ultimately it does come full circle.
In the book, you write about, I mean, as the full title of the book suggests, the use of the Department of Justice essentially as a tool, as an intimidation tool, and as a weapon against those who criticized Donald Trump. How much further did he want the DOJ to go, and the DOJ was unwilling to do it? Because he made way more requests than they actually agreed to, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Now, in my specific case, Jeffrey Berman just came out with a book. And again, I have no regard for him or his book. So I want to be clear about that. I think Jeffrey Berman, his actions are either one of two things: unethical or illegal. Donald Trump, through Bill Barr, placed pressure on the Southern District of New York, the Department of Justice, to expunge his name from anything related to the actions, the claims that were brought against me initially, that I ultimately pled guilty to. And my book, Revenge, right, how Donald Trump weaponized the United States Department of Justice against his critics, it really takes a deep dive into everything. And Jeffrey Berman is, of course, named in my book as well. But what it does, what Jeffrey Berman's book does, is it validates everything that I say in my book. It shows that Donald Trump's goal was to use the Department of Justice as his own private law firm, as his own private hit squad, to go against people that he didn't like. Myself, people like James Comey, and others.
The book is an extraordinary expose of more, as you say, the inner workings of how all this was done. The book is out on October 11th, but it is available for pre-order now, as well as signed pre-order. We've been speaking with Michael Cohen, the book's author. And again, the book is Revenge, how Donald Trump weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice against his critics. Michael, always great having you on, and best of luck with the book release.
Thanks, David. And I will speak to you soon.